Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive windows. His ship was called the Zenith's Edge, and it was the largest vessel in the Coalition fleet. Behind him, 846 other ships moved through space in perfect formation. They had been traveling for 3 months, and now they were finally close to their target. The target was a small yellow star that the humans called Sol. The humans lived on the third planet from their star, a blue and green world they called Earth. They also had colonies on their red fourth planet and several moons. For such a young species, they had spread out quite quickly. Kextar's 4 arms moved across the control panels as he checked the fleet status. The Vorthak Empire had been in space for over 10,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and absorbed dozens of species into the Coalition. This should be just another easy victory. But something bothered him about these humans. They had been surprisingly stubborn during the negotiations. Most species surrendered when they saw the size of a Coalition fleet. The humans just kept saying no. "Admiral," called his navigation officer, "we are approaching the asteroid belt around the human system." "Good," Kextar replied. His voice was deep and rumbling. "Send a message to all ships. Maintain formation. These humans need to see our full strength." On the other side of the solar system, Captain Jake Morrison was having a very different conversation. His ship, the New Horizon, was much smaller than any Coalition vessel. It was designed for diplomacy, not war. But Jake had been a soldier before he became a diplomat. "Admiral Carter, this is Morrison," he spoke into his communication device. "The Coalition fleet is massive. I count at least 800 ships. They're moving past the outer planets now." The voice that came back was calm and steady. "Admiral." Lisa Carter had been preparing for this day for years. "Understood, Captain. What's their formation?" "Standard Coalition attack pattern," Jake replied. "They're not even trying to hide their intentions. The lead ships are all battle cruisers. They want us to see how outgunned we are." "Let them think that," Carter said. "Continue monitoring and report any changes. And Jake, don't worry. We're ready for this." Jake wasn't so sure. The Coalition had been around for thousands of years. They had technology and experience that humans could only dream of. But Admiral Carter sounded confident, and she had never been wrong before. Back on Earth, Admiral Carter was standing in the command center deep under the North American mountains. The room was filled with screens showing every ship in the solar system. Hundreds of technicians worked at their stations, coordinating humanity's defense. "Ma'am," called one of the technicians, "we're receiving the final diplomatic reports. Ambassador Torres says the negotiations have failed completely." Carter nodded. She had expected this. The Coalition didn't negotiate with species they considered inferior. They made demands and expected obedience. But humans had never been good at following orders from bullies. "Any word from the outer system?" she asked. "All stations report ready, Admiral. The automated systems are standing by for your command." Carter walked to the main display screen. It showed the entire solar system, with red dots marking Coalition ships and blue dots showing human vessels. The red dots vastly outnumbered the blue ones, but the screen didn't show everything. On the moon called Luna, General Nick Hayes was making his final preparations. The base he commanded was hidden under the lunar surface. For 20 years, it had appeared to be a simple research station. The Coalition scouts had dismissed it as unimportant. They had no idea what was really down there. "General," his aide reported, "all quantum relays are online. We can transmit the activation codes anywhere in the system instantly." "Good," Hayes replied. "And the power systems?" "Operating at full capacity. The fusion reactors are stable. We can maintain full power for months if necessary. Hayes looked at the massive control panel in front of him. Most of the switches and buttons were dark. But when Admiral Carter gave the word, this room would become the most important place in human space. In the asteroid belt, Captain Ben Clark was checking his own preparations. His ship, the Iron Maiden, had once been a mining vessel. Now it was armed with makeshift weapons and crewed by volunteers. Most of his crew had been miners and engineers just days ago. "Captain," called his weapons officer, "the mining charges are loaded and ready. We've got enough explosives to level a mountain." "Let's hope we don't need to use all of them," Clark said. "But if the Coalition wants a fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." His ship was one of 12 vessels that had volunteered for the most dangerous mission. They would be the first to face the Coalition fleet. Everyone knew it was likely a suicide mission, but no one had backed down. The Coalition fleet continued its advance through the solar system. Admiral Kexatar was pleased with their progress. The humans had only shown a few small ships so far. Nothing that could threaten even one of his escorts, let alone the main battle fleet. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the outer system." "What kind of readings?" Kextar asked. "Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our database. They might be industrial facilities or power plants." Kextar dismissed the report with a wave of one hand. Young species often had crude power systems that produced strange readings. It was nothing to worry about. But if he had understood what those readings really meant, he would have ordered his fleet to retreat immediately. Deep in the outer system, beyond the orbit of the outermost planets, something vast was beginning to wake up. Automated systems that had been dormant for years started their startup sequences. Fusion reactors larger than most cities began warming up. Weapons that could reshape reality itself started charging their power cells. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment. While the galaxy thought they were a primitive species limited to one star system, human engineers had been building something incredible, something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Admiral Carter received one final report from her intelligence officers. The Coalition was committed to their attack. There would be no more chances for peace. She picked up her communication device and sent a single message to every human ship and base in the solar system. "Thunder Dawn is authorized. All units, prepare for war." The message was received across human space in an instant. On Luna, General Hayes began entering authorization codes. In the asteroid belt, Captain Clark ordered his fleet to battle stations. And in the depths of space, where no Coalition sensor could detect them, humanity's greatest achievement began to stir. The storm was about to break, and the galaxy would never be the same. The space station called Haven's Rest had been floating in neutral space for over 3,000 years. It was ancient even by galactic standards, built by a species that had disappeared long before the Coalition formed. The station served one purpose. It was the only place where different species could meet on truly neutral ground. Ambassador Ryan Torres stepped out of his shuttle and looked around the docking bay. The station was enormous, built from some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered the walls, written in languages that no one could read anymore. But despite its age, everything still worked perfectly. Ryan was nervous, though he tried not to show it. This was humanity's last chance to avoid war. If these negotiations failed, millions of people might die. He straightened his uniform and walked toward the meeting hall. The main conference room was a massive circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. 12 different species had sent representatives to this meeting. They sat around a curved table that could accommodate beings of very different sizes and shapes. Admiral Kextar was there, representing the Vorthak Empire. His species looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. Their skin was dark green and covered with scales. Kextar wore a military uniform covered with medals and ribbons. Next to him sat the ethereal representative, whose name was something humans couldn't pronounce. The ethereals looked like living crystals that somehow moved and spoke. They communicated through harmonic frequencies that most species needed translators to understand. The collective had sent a single representative, but Ryan knew that millions of minds were watching through those dark eyes. The collective species looked like insects, but they shared a group mind that spanned entire star systems. Ryan took his seat at the table and activated his translator. The device would convert his words into the languages of all the other species present. It would also translate their responses back into English. "Thank you all for coming," Ryan began. "Humanity hopes we can reach a peaceful agreement that benefits everyone." Admiral Kextar made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Ambassador Torres, let us be clear about the situation. Your species controls exactly one star system. The Coalition controls thousands. You are in no position to make demands." "We're not making demands," Ryan replied calmly. "We're offering partnership. Humanity has technologies and knowledge that could benefit the entire Coalition." The ethereal representative spoke in musical tones. "Your species is too young and aggressive. You have expanded to multiple worlds in less than 2 centuries. This shows dangerous ambition." "It shows initiative," Ryan countered. "Humanity has always been explorers. We push boundaries and solve problems. Those qualities could help the Coalition grow stronger." The collective representative spoke in a buzzing voice. "We have analyzed human behavior patterns. Your species shows excessive individualism. You cannot be integrated into proper galactic civilization without extensive modification." Ryan felt his temper rising, but forced himself to stay calm. "What kind of modifications?" "Genetic therapy to reduce aggression," Kextar said. "Neural conditioning to improve compliance. Population controls to limit expansion. Standard procedures for primitive species." "Those aren't modifications," Ryan said. "That's slavery." "Call it what you want," the ethereal said. "The alternative is elimination. Your species cannot be allowed to spread its chaos throughout the galaxy." Ryan stood up slowly. "Let me make humanity's position clear. We will never submit to genetic modification or mind control. We will never accept population limits imposed by others. And we will never bow to any species that thinks might makes right." "Then you are declaring war on the entire Coalition," Kextar said. His voice was pleased, as if this was the outcome he had wanted all along. "No," Ryan said. "We're declaring our independence. If you choose to attack us, that will be your decision, not ours." The room erupted in voices speaking in a dozen different languages. The translator struggled to keep up with all the overlapping conversations. Finally, Kextar raised his hand for silence. "Very well, Ambassador Torres. The Coalition will give humanity one final chance. You have 24 hours to submit to our authority. After that, we will pacify your system by force." "And what does pacification mean?" Ryan asked, though he already knew the answer. "Complete military occupation, removal of your government, installation of Coalition administrators," Reduction of your population to manageable levels. Kextar paused. Perhaps 10% of your current numbers. Ryan felt cold anger building in his chest. They were talking about killing billions of people as casually as discussing the weather. In that case, Admiral, I have a message for you from the people of Earth. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small recording device. When he activated it, President Elena Rodriguez's voice filled the room. To the leaders of the Galactic Coalition, the recording said, humanity rejects your ultimatum completely. We will not submit to your authority. We will not accept your modifications. And we will not surrender our freedom to anyone, regardless of how many ships they bring. The recording continued. If you choose to attack us, you will learn something important about humanity. We do not start fights, but we always finish them. And we are much more dangerous than you think. Ryan turned off the device and looked around the room. That is humanity's final answer. Then you have doomed your species, the collective representative said. Our fleet will destroy every human world within days. Maybe, Ryan said, or maybe you'll discover that humanity has been preparing for this conversation for a very long time. He walked toward the exit, but Kextar's voice stopped him. Ambassador, surely you realize the futility of resistance. Your entire fleet consists of perhaps 50 vessels. We have brought nearly 1,000 ships to your system. Ryan turned back with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Admiral, let me ask you something. In all your thousands of years of conquest, have you ever faced a species that was actually ready for you? What do you mean? I mean a species that saw you coming decades in advance. A species that spent every day of those decades preparing for your arrival. A species that built their entire civilization around the knowledge that someday, someone like you would come knocking. Kextar's expression changed slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? Ryan asked. I guess you'll find out in 24 hours. As Ryan left the station, he sent a coded message to Captain Morrison aboard the New Horizon. The message was just 2 words, Thunder Dawn. Captain Morrison received the message as his ship orbited outside the asteroid belt. He immediately transmitted those same 2 words to Admiral Carter on Earth. Within minutes, the message had reached every human ship and base in the solar system. On Luna, General Hayes began entering the final authorization codes. The massive computers under the lunar surface hummed to life, sending signals to receivers throughout the outer system. In the asteroid belt, Captain Clark received his orders and smiled grimly. His small fleet of converted mining ships began moving toward their intercept positions. They might be outnumbered, but they weren't outgunned. Not really. Admiral Carter stood in her command center, watching the displays as the Coalition fleet continued its approach. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Admiral, one of her technicians called out, outer system stations report ready. All primary systems are online. Understood, Carter replied. Begin final. Startup sequence. Deep in space, where the Coalition's sensors couldn't detect them, fusion reactors the size of city blocks began warming up. Weapon systems that violated several laws of physics started charging their power cells. And artificial intelligences more advanced than anything the Coalition had ever seen began running their final diagnostic checks. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had not been idle during their centuries of isolation. While other species had grown comfortable and lazy after millennia of peace, humans had been building something that would change everything. The 24-hour countdown had begun, and somewhere in the dark between the stars, Giants were beginning to wake up. The news of the failed negotiations spread across human space faster than light itself. Quantum communication arrays that had been hidden for decades suddenly came alive, carrying messages between Earth, Mars, Luna, and the outer colonies. Everyone knew what was coming, and everyone knew their role. On Mars, engineer Maya Patel stood in the central control room of the Olympus Communications Array. The facility was built inside the largest volcano in the solar system, hidden from alien sensors. By kilometers of rock and sophisticated stealth systems. Maya had spent 15 years of her life building this place, and now she would finally see if it worked. "Status report," she called to her team of technicians. "All quantum relays are online," reported her assistant, David Kim. "We have perfect connection with Luna, Earth, and all outer system stations. Signal strength is at maximum." Maya looked at the main display screen. It showed a map of the entire solar system with communication links connecting every human installation. The network was her masterpiece. When the fighting started, every human ship and base would be connected instantly, sharing information and coordinating their response. "What about the deep space relays?" she asked. "All green, ma'am. Even the ones in the Kuiper Belt are responding perfectly." Maya nodded with satisfaction. The aliens thought they were facing a primitive species with basic technology. They had no idea that humanity had built a communication network more advanced than anything in coalition space. When the battle began, humans would have perfect coordination while the aliens would be operating blind. Her hands were shaking slightly as she made the final adjustments to the system. Not from fear, but from excitement. This was the moment she had been working toward her entire career. Soon, the galaxy would see what human engineers could accomplish when they put their minds to it. In the asteroid belt, Captain Ben Clark was making his own final preparations. His ship, the Iron Maiden, floated in the shadow of a massive asteroid, hidden from coalition sensors. Around him, 11 other vessels waited in similar hiding spots. All of Clark's ships had once been mining vessels or cargo haulers, but over the past 5 years, they had been quietly converted into something much more dangerous. The mining lasers had been replaced with military-grade particle beams. The cargo holds now carried missiles and torpedoes. The industrial shields had been upgraded with military armor. "Captain," called his weapons officer, Tony Martinez, "all mining charges are loaded and ready. We've got enough explosives to crack this entire asteroid field." "Good," Clark replied. "What about the gravity bombs?" 16 ready for deployment. Each one can create a localized gravity well strong enough to pull ships out of formation." Clark smiled grimly. The aliens expected to face primitive human weapons. Instead, they would discover that humans had turned industrial equipment into weapons of war. Mining charges became massive bombs. Gravity manipulators used for asteroid processing became space-time weapons. His crew was made up of volunteers from the asteroid mining colonies. None of them were professional soldiers, but they all knew the belt better than anyone. They could navigate through the chaotic gravitational fields and use the asteroids themselves as weapons. "Sir," his navigator called out, "long-range sensors detect the coalition fleet approaching. They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours." "Understood," Clark said. "Send a message to all ships. This is what we trained for. The aliens think they're hunting sheep. Let's show them they're fighting wolves." On Earth, President Elena Rodriguez stood before a crowd of reporters in the global capital. The press conference was being broadcast to every human world and colony. She knew that millions of people were watching, and that this might be her last speech as president. "My fellow humans," she began, "today we face the greatest challenge in our species' history. A vast alien fleet approaches our home, demanding our surrender and our freedom. They believe we are weak because we are young. They believe we are helpless because we are outnumbered." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "They are wrong on both counts. For decades, humanity has been preparing for this day. While we explored and colonized, we also built and planned. While we negotiated for peace, we prepared for war. And while our enemies counted our ships and dismissed our capabilities, we were creating something they never imagined possible." Rodriguez's voice grew stronger. "Today, humanity will show the galaxy who we truly are. We are explorers and builders, scientists and engineers. We solve problems that others think impossible. We achieve things that others think unthinkable. And we never, ever surrender to bullies. To our people throughout the solar system, stay strong, stay united, and trust in the men and women who have dedicated their lives to defending us. To our enemies, you have made a terrible mistake. You are about to learn why humanity has survived and thrived on a world that has tried to kill us for millions of years. We do not seek war, but we are ready for it. We do not want to fight, but we will not back down. And when this is over, the galaxy will understand that humanity is not prey. We are predators, and you have just walked into our hunting ground." The president ended her speech and walked off the stage. Within minutes, her words were being broadcast throughout human space and intercepted by coalition listening posts. Let the aliens hear it, she thought. Let them try to understand what they were really facing. In listening posts throughout the solar system, human intelligence officers monitored coalition communications. The intercepts revealed something interesting. The aliens were completely confident in their victory. They were already discussing how to divide up human territory and which species would get which planets. Lieutenant Carol Foster sat in a monitoring station on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Her job was to track coalition fleet movements and report any changes in their formation. What she heard in their communications made her angry. "They're talking about turning Earth into a vacation resort," she reported to her supervisor. "They want to keep some humans alive as servants and entertainers." "Typical coalition arrogance," her supervisor replied. "They'll learn soon enough." Carol continued listening to the alien chatter. The coalition commanders were casual in their discussions, as if the coming battle was nothing more than a training exercise. They had no idea what was waiting for them in the outer system. On Luna, General Nick Hayes made his final checks of the control systems. The lunar base was the heart of humanity's secret defense network. From here, he could coordinate every human vessel and weapon system in the solar system. "General," his aide reported, "all deep space assets report ready. The automated systems are standing by for activation. Power levels? All fusion reactors operating at full capacity. We can maintain maximum power for months if necessary." Hayes nodded and walked to the massive control panel that dominated the center of the room. Most of the switches and displays were dark, waiting for his authorization. But when Admiral Carter gave the final order, this room would become the most important place in human space. He thought about his daughter, who was serving aboard one of the defense platforms orbiting Saturn. He thought about his son, who was part of a research team on one of Neptune's moons. Both of them were probably as scared as he was, but they would do their duty. That was what humans did. When faced with impossible odds, they found a way to win. Deep in the outer system, automated, Systems continued their startup procedures. Massive fusion reactors warmed up slowly, following safety protocols that had been programmed decades earlier. Weapon systems ran diagnostic checks, ensuring that every component was functioning perfectly, and in the deepest, darkest regions of space, where no coalition sensor could detect them, 8 objects began to move. They had been waiting in cold sleep for 20 years, powered down and invisible. Now they were waking up, and when they were fully operational, they would be the most powerful weapons ever created by any species in the galaxy. The countdown continued. In less than 18 hours, the Coalition fleet would cross into the inner system and the battle would begin. Humanity was as ready as they could be. The calm before the storm was ending, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The Coalition fleet moved through the asteroid belt like a massive spear cutting through space. Admiral Kextar stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His ships maintained perfect formation despite the gravitational chaos of the asteroid field. This was the mark of a truly professional military force. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "we're detecting human vessels ahead. 12 ships, all small craft. They appear to be converted industrial vessels." Kextar looked at the display and almost laughed. The humans were actually planning to fight his entire fleet with a dozen mining ships and cargo haulers. It was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. "What are their weapons capabilities?" he asked. "Primitive. Energy weapons, sir. Some projectile systems. Nothing that can penetrate our shields. They pose no threat to the fleet." "Nevertheless, we should destroy them quickly," Kextar said. "Send the forward escorts to eliminate these obstacles. I want them cleared from our path within the hour." 3 Coalition destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the human ships. Each destroyer was 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel and carried enough firepower to level a city. This should be over quickly. Captain Ben Clark watched the approaching enemy ships from the bridge of the Iron Maiden. His vessel was hidden in the shadow of a massive asteroid, invisible to Coalition sensors until it was too late. Around him, 11 other ships waited in similar ambush positions. "All ships, this is Clark," he transmitted on a secure frequency. "Enemy destroyers are approaching. Remember the plan. Hit fast, hit hard, and make them pay for every meter of space." Clark had spent 20 years working in the asteroid belt. He knew every rock, every gravitational anomaly, every safe passage through the chaotic field. The Coalition ships were following standard navigation protocols, which made them predictable. "Tony, are the mining charges ready?" he asked his weapons officer. "Ready, Captain. We've loaded the charges with enhanced explosives. Each one has the power of a tactical nuclear weapon." "Good. And the gravity bombs?" 16 bombs ready for deployment. They'll create artificial gravity wells that should disrupt enemy formations." Clark nodded. The aliens expected to face primitive human weapons. Instead, they would discover that humans had turned their industrial tools into instruments of war. Mining charges became massive bombs. Gravity manipulators used for asteroid processing became space-time weapons. The first Coalition destroyer entered the kill zone, following a clear path between 2 large asteroids. It never detected the human ship hiding in the shadow of the smaller rock. "Fire!" Clark ordered. The Iron Maiden emerged from hiding and launched 6 mining charges at point-blank range. The charges were designed to shatter asteroids, but they worked just as well against starship armor. The explosions tore through the destroyer's shields and hull, sending debris spinning through space. All around the asteroid field, 11 other human ships launched their own attacks. They used the gravitational fields of the asteroids to slingshot, their weapons at impossible angles. They triggered controlled asteroid collisions that sent massive rocks tumbling into enemy formations. The second destroyer tried to respond, but Captain Maria Santos aboard the converted freighter Desert Wind was already moving. Her ship dove between two asteroids, using their gravity to accelerate beyond what should have been possible. She launched a spread of gravity bombs that created localized space-time distortions. The Coalition ship found itself caught in an artificial gravity well that pulled it off course and slammed it into an asteroid. The impact crushed the destroyer's forward section and left it spinning helplessly. The third destroyer managed to fire its weapons, but the humans were already gone. They used their intimate knowledge of the asteroid field to vanish among the rocks, appearing only long enough to launch another attack before disappearing again. "This is impossible!" shouted the Coalition weapons officer aboard the surviving destroyer. "How are they moving so fast? How are they hitting us from impossible angles?" The answer was simple. The humans weren't fighting a space battle. They were fighting an asteroid belt battle, using the environment itself as a weapon. Every rock was a potential projectile. Every gravitational field was a tool for maneuvering. Every shadow was a hiding place. Captain Clark's ship took a direct hit from the destroyer's main guns, but the Iron Maiden kept fighting. The mining ship's armor had been reinforced with materials designed to survive asteroid impacts. It could take punishment that would destroy a military vessel. "Hull breach in Section 4, reported his damage control officer. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal it off," Clark ordered. "How are our weapons?" "Still operational, sir. We have 4 mining charges left." Clark looked at his tactical display. The Coalition destroyer was damaged, but still fighting. His own ship was crippled and losing life support, but he had one more card to play. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed," he announced. "Set course for the enemy vessel. Load all remaining charges for proximity detonation." His crew didn't hesitate. They had volunteered for this mission knowing it was probably suicide. If they were going to die, they would take as many enemies with them as possible. The Iron Maiden accelerated toward the Coalition destroyer, its engines pushed beyond their safety limits. The enemy ship tried to turn away, but it was too late. Clark's vessel slammed into the destroyer's side and detonated all 4 mining charges simultaneously. The explosion was visible from Mars. When the light faded, both ships were gone, nothing left but expanding clouds of debris. But the human sacrifice had achieved its goal. 3 Coalition destroyers were destroyed, and the main fleet had lost its forward scouts. More importantly, the brief battle had sent a message that would reach every Coalition ship within minutes. Captain Jake Morrison aboard the New Horizon watched the battle from a safe distance. As soon as the fighting ended, he opened communications. "On all frequencies, this is Captain Morrison of the Human Defense Force," he broadcast. "To all Coalition vessels, this is humanity's answer to your ultimatum. We do not submit. We do not surrender, and you have no idea what you've awakened." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You've just seen 12 converted mining ships destroy 3 of your warships. Those were not military vessels. They were civilian craft operated by volunteers. If that's what our miners and cargo pilots can do, imagine what our actual military is capable of. You came here expecting to face a primitive, helpless species. Instead, you're fighting humans. We've survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. We've conquered a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. We've turned tools into weapons and civilians into soldiers." Morrison's voice grew harder. "You wanted a demonstration of human capabilities. You've got one. Now ask yourselves, if our miners can do this much damage, What do you think our real military has been building in the outer system? Admiral Kextar received Morrison's transmission aboard his flagship. The loss of 3 destroyers to a handful of mining ships was humiliating, but it was also instructive. These humans were more dangerous than expected. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, analysis of the battle shows the humans used unconventional weapons and tactics. They turned industrial equipment into military systems. What about their ship movements? How did they achieve those impossible maneuvers? They used the asteroid field's gravitational effects to accelerate and change direction. It requires incredible skill and intimate knowledge of local conditions. Kextar nodded slowly. The humans had been preparing for this battle for years, maybe decades. They knew every rock in this asteroid field and had trained extensively for this exact scenario. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving urgent messages from Coalition Command. They want to know how we lost 3 destroyers to 12 mining ships." "Tell them the humans are more resourceful than expected," Kextar replied. "But also tell them that this changes nothing. We still have overwhelming numerical superiority." But privately, Kextar was beginning to worry. If human miners could fight this effectively, what would happen when they faced the actual human defense force? What other surprises were waiting in the outer system? He looked at his tactical display, showing the path toward Mars and Earth. Somewhere ahead, more human ships were waiting. And if the past hour had taught him anything, it was that humanity was full of unpleasant surprises. "All ships, maintain formation and advance toward Mars," he ordered. "But increase sensor sweeps and keep shields at maximum. These humans are more dangerous than we thought." The Coalition fleet continued its advance, but now they moved more cautiously. The humans had drawn first blood, and it was red. Admiral Kextar stood before the main tactical display of his flagship, studying the approach to Mars. The red planet hung in space ahead of them, surrounded by a network of human installations and defense platforms. Intelligence reports suggested the humans had perhaps 40 ships defending the planet. Against his fleet of over 800 vessels, it should be an easy victory. But after the asteroid belt engagement, Kextar was taking nothing for granted. The humans had already proven they were more dangerous than expected. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from the outer system." "What kind of readings?" Kextar asked, moving to the sensor station. "Unknown. Energy signatures, sir. They're massive, but the signals are very faint. Our computers can't identify the source." Kextar frowned as he looked at the sensor data. The readings were coming from several points beyond the orbit of Saturn. They looked almost like power plants, but the energy output was enormous. Far larger than anything a young species should be able to build. "Could they be natural phenomena?" he asked. "Possible, sir. The outer system has many gas giants and unusual gravitational conditions, but the patterns seem too regular to be natural." "Keep monitoring those readings," Kextar ordered, "and increase long-range sensor sweeps. I want to know about any surprises before we encounter them." What Kextar didn't know was that he was looking at the energy signatures of humanity's greatest achievement. Deep in the outer system, 8 massive objects were completing their startup sequences. Objects that had been hidden in the cold darkness for 20 years were finally coming online. Dr. Sam Rivera stood in the command center of the lead vessel, watching his instruments as the ship's systems completed their final checks. The command center was enormous, with walls lined with displays and control panels. At the center of the room stood a single chair surrounded by holographic displays. "All systems online," reported his chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Amy Walsh. fusion cores operating at full capacity, gravity manipulators charged and ready, weapon systems armed. Rivera nodded and took his seat in the command chair. Around him, three-dimensional displays showed every system on the ship. The vessel was 3 kilometers long and massed more than a small moon. It was the largest mobile object ever built by humanity. "Atlas," Rivera called out. "Status report." A calm artificial voice responded from speakers throughout the command center. "All primary systems are operational, Dr. Rivera. Engines are ready for full power. Weapons are charged. Defensive systems are active. I am ready to engage." Atlas was more than just a computer. It was an artificial intelligence that had been designed specifically to operate this vessel. The AI was smarter than any human and faster than any coalition computer system. When the fighting started, Atlas would be controlling weapons that could reshape reality itself. "What's our position relative to the coalition fleet?" Rivera asked. "The enemy force is currently 6 hours from Mars," Atlas replied. "They remain unaware of our presence. Stealth systems are functioning perfectly." Rivera smiled. The humans had learned from studying captured coalition technology that most alien species relied heavily on sensor networks to detect threats. But human stealth systems were based on different principles. Instead of just hiding their energy signatures, the human ships could bend space around themselves, making them effectively invisible. "Sir," Lieutenant Walsh reported, "we're receiving activation codes from Luna. Admiral Carter is authorizing final battle preparations." "Understood," Rivera said. "Atlas, begin moving us into position, and send a message to the other ships. It's time to wake up the giants." Throughout the outer system, 7 other massive vessels received similar activation orders. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, built using technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. They had names that reflected their power: World Shaker, Starbreaker, Void Crusher, Planet Render, Space Ripper, Reality Bender, and Time Shaper. Captain Tony Rodriguez commanded the World Shaker from a bridge that looked more like a cathedral than a military vessel. The ceiling was transparent, offering a perfect view of the stars above. The ship's fusion reactors were so powerful that they could be seen as points of light through the deck plating. "All stations report ready," his executive officer announced. "Gravity manipulation systems are online. We can create localized black holes on command." Rodriguez had been a theoretical physicist before joining the military. He understood the science behind their weapons better than most. The gravity manipulators could create artificial singularities that would consume anything in their path. It was technology that violated several known laws of physics. Captain Kelly Adams aboard the Starbreaker was preparing her own weapon systems. Her ship specialized in quantum warfare, using technology that could phase enemy vessels partially out of normal space-time. It was a weapon that no coalition species had ever encountered because none of them had discovered the underlying physics: quantum. "Mines are loaded and ready," her weapons officer reported. "Each mine can shift an entire ship into a parallel dimension." "Good," Adams replied. "The aliens are about to learn that humans don't just fight in 3 dimensions. All 8 ships began moving toward the inner system, their massive forms cutting through space with impossible grace. Each vessel was equipped with engines that could manipulate gravity itself, allowing them to accelerate and maneuver in ways that defied conventional physics. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kextar suddenly noticed a change in the sensor. "Readings. The energy signatures from the outer system were getting stronger and moving." "Admiral," his sensor officer called out urgently, "those energy sources are approaching us. They're moving at incredible speed." "How fast?" Kextar demanded. According to our instruments, they're traveling at nearly 1/4 light speed, but that's impossible for objects of that size. Kextar stared at the display. The readings showed 8 massive objects approaching from different directions. Each one was larger than his flagship, and they were moving faster than anything in the Coalition database. Sir, his tactical officer added, the objects are too large to be starships. Our computers classify them as small moons or asteroids, but asteroids don't move under their own power. For the first time since the invasion began, Kextar felt a cold touch of fear. How long until they reach us? At their current speed, approximately 4 hours. Kextar turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all ships. Increase to maximum alert status. Prepare for possible engagement with unknown vessels. But even as he gave the orders, Kextar suspected it might be too late. The humans had hidden these massive ships for decades, keeping them secret until the moment of battle. Whatever they were, they represented technology far beyond anything the Coalition possessed. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in her command center on Earth, watching the tactical displays as her Titan-class vessels moved into position. Each ship was the result of 20 years of research and development. They represented the absolute pinnacle of human engineering and scientific achievement. Admiral, her communications officer reported, Captain Morrison is requesting permission to contact the Coalition fleet. Granted, Carter replied. It's time to give them a chance to surrender. Captain Morrison opened a channel to the Coalition flagship. His voice carried across space to Admiral Kextar's bridge with perfect clarity. Admiral Kextar, this is Captain Morrison of the Human Defense Force. I am authorized to offer you one final opportunity to withdraw from our system peacefully. Kextar's response was immediate. Captain Morrison, you are in no position to make demands. We outnumber your forces 10-1. Do you? Morrison asked. Admiral, I suggest you check your long-range sensors again. You might be surprised by what you find. Kextar looked at his sensor displays. The 8 massive objects were now clearly visible, approaching from multiple directions. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in Coalition databases. What are those things? Kextar demanded. Those, Morrison said with quiet pride, are Titan-class vessels of the Human Defense Force. Each one represents 20 years of human engineering and determination. They are the most powerful ships ever built by any species in the galaxy. Morrison paused, letting the information sink in. Admiral, you came here expecting to face a primitive species with basic technology. Instead, you're about to encounter the full might of human innovation. Our ships don't just carry weapons, they carry technologies that can reshape reality itself. We still outnumber you, Kextar said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Numbers don't matter when you're fighting gods, Morrison replied. Each of our Titan-class vessels is more powerful than your entire fleet. They can manipulate gravity, bend space-time, and rewrite the laws of physics in local areas. The communication channel remained open as both fleets continued their approach. In 4 hours, they would meet in the space between Mars and Jupiter. When they did, the galaxy would witness the most one-sided battle in recorded history. But first, humanity would give the Coalition one last chance to avoid annihilation.